Hey, I'm Jonathan Pezza,
And I'm Amy Vorpahl.
and we're here to talk a little bit about the Blood and Ether supernatural horror role-playing system.
Well, I have known Jonathan Pezza for over a decade, and we've worked on numerous projects together. So anything he touches is gold. And when he said, I'm building a game, I think we both did the math and we're like, yeah, this makes sense to work together on this.
Yeah, and I'm so excited. I have admired Amy and her entire sort of creative world that she's built around herself for like more than a decade. Just it's been amazing watching you grow as an artist and as a creator and as a writer, and so I'm very excited that we get to play together in this on this project.
Yay.
Um, the game for me, just to share with you guys, I have been a gamer since I was like 13 years old. Dungeons and Dragons, Rifts, Vampires, Vampire the Masquerade, just it really defined actually a lot of the way that I write fiction and write my podcast. And so I've wanted to make a game forever. And I sort of realized that as I've been playing a lot of the games, especially games in the horror world, the mechanics of the games didn't take advantage of all the opportunities there were in the horror genre. A lot of them felt like they were skins over very sort of standard role playing environments, but didn't add what makes horror special to the actual game rules. And so that was sort of my personal mission. So we're really excited to be able to share some of the cool stuff that we have planned.
One thing early on that you had thought of, Jonathan, was the terror gauge. And I know that that is a very fundamental part of what makes this game different from other horror games and specifically other Chaosium games. So, will you talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, so we've designed this central mechanic. It's a 1 to 50 sliding scale that moves very quickly in play. And what it does is simulate the experience of fear. And so, one of the cool things that I realized as I was working on Karnacki is Karnacki had a very interesting perspective in the books. He believed that fear wasn't something that you should run away from. Fear to him was a barometer. It was a way of sort of determining how bad the storm was. And from that, you could use it to fight off these supernatural creatures instead of it being this thing that you want to make sure you don't experience. So for us, fear is part of the fun. Fear is at the very heart of all of the gaming. And this mechanic lets us put fear into the rules in a way that covers combat, it covers our action economy, it covers our ability to do complex skills. And as you get more scared, you're not necessarily less capable. The more bold you are, which is one end of the scale, the more you can do complex actions, but the slower you are. The more scared you are, the faster you are, the quicker you are in combat, but those actions become more limited as your own terror and paranoia. And eventually, if you get all the way to the top, you become catatonic. That is the one position in the fear scale where you are 100% limited. And so, your job as a player is to manage your own fear across the game as all of these supernatural creatures impart fear points on you in different ways.
No, that's just so cool because it is like madness. It is like, going nuts when Cthulhu's like in your brain, but it's just more accessible and there's mechanics around it. So it gives you this like almost puppet master meta thing that you want, which is, oh, I want my character. I'm in a horror film. I want my characters to be afraid, and I want that to mean something.
Yeah.
And so you, as the player, can like inflict this on your characters when not whenever you want, but in order to amplify the storytelling.
Yeah, like in horror, fear is a delicious experience, and we want that to be the case in for players at the table. Uh, their way it works is that you'll get fear points, and those will be generated either by the environment. A house might have a fear factor, and that'll trigger your need to basically roll your resistance check to see how resistant you are to fear. But if you fail those checks, it pushes you down the terror gauge towards being more scared. But additionally, like as you interact with aetheric enemies, the supernatural creatures in our game, they, as their attacks come at you, may also inflict fear points. But the opposite of fear points is respite points. Respite is the feeling of safety, fundamentally. And the feeling of safety pushes you back towards being bolder in your actions.
You're just able to regulate that nervous system, baby.
Exactly. And so all the powers, all the character classes, all the support classes, they're all about really regulating and managing the terror gauge to your benefit.
So the other thing, I mean, look, it's a role-playing game. It's a new one. We're gonna have new monsters. You're gonna
Oh
have
yeah.
new creations. Any favorites that you've crafted?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite enemies are a thing called extra mundane animatus. They're it's a long name, but what it ultimately means is possessed objects, like bed sheets coming to life and animating themselves and coming after you, like tables becoming sort of monsters that can kind of jump and run around. Plus, you have the Aetheri. The Aetheri are these supernatural creatures that live in the Nightland and sort of break their way into our world. They are incredibly mysterious, incredibly scary, and battling them isn't just about inflicting damage. It's fundamentally about trying to understand what that creature is doing in this world. The crux of combat also comes from understanding, finding the Achilles heel of these enemies, and you may fight an enemy multiple times and not kill it, not knock it back into the Nightland. The Aetheri ultimately don't die. They're just sort of banished out of the natural world. But figuring out how to banish them is one of the really fun things in play.
I There's a game I recently played. It's a video game. Phasmophobia.
Oh, I have not played that yet. No, tell
Oh
me
my
more.
gosh. Yeah, no. But this reminded me of Phasmophobia because as you're ghost hunting, the ghost is scary to a point, but since it is like an ethereal being, there are things it just can't do. So
Mhm.
like hiding behind a dresser could save you, you know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a really good point because our game sort of deals with that, like in an interesting way. So, you know, when your sort of back is against the wall in these fights, and that should be more often than not, you should be on the defensive in this game. I mean, that is the nature of a good horror game. Is it's about running until you can muster the resources to ultimately fight effectively. And so if you are finding yourselves stuck, like, and too many characters are catatonic, the simplest way to generate that one respite point that you need is to create sanctuary. And sanctuary can be generated just by simply barring a door, getting a locked door between you and the supernatural creature. Um,
Oh yeah.
if a space has a fear factor and it's generating fear, your player characters and your support characters, their powers actually will help either amplify or support the creation of sanctuary, or at times their power will allow you to create sanctuary in the middle of a combat space where you can't put a barrier between you. So those powers and the spectrum of player choices you have in building your character really come into play in how effective you are in handling these really difficult situations.
I also want to bring, I mean, we probably should have talked about this at the beginning, but there's a whole meta context of where we're playing this game and the world itself. It's like a whole genre, it's a whole time period. So, what first of all, what world have we chosen? And two, why? Why this specific time period?
Yeah, so the idea is that this generally takes place at the beginning of the 20th century between 1900 and 1930. I think that the reason why people gravitate towards that time period is because in real life, supernatural things were believed to be just part of the everyday experience for most people. It was the age of spiritualism. Newspaper articles, scientists, everybody was talking about ghosts and psychics and supernatural powers and the occult. Part of it was motivated by the fact that in Egypt, the Egyptologists were just pulling these unbelievably amazing artifacts out of like the tombs that they were opening. And so the entire world was really focused on that. And then on top of that, you add the fact that from 1915, the beginning, the beginnings of World War One to the end of that decade, 1 in 5 people on the planet died either in World War One or from the Spanish flu. And so everybody was mourning. Everybody was looking for a connection to the afterlife, mostly out of grief. And so we were so connected to our own superstitions that that time period just generates all of these like really wonderful opportunities to experience supernatural in a very different culture.
Yeah, and technology was growing so quickly too that and becoming more accessible. So where it once was, part of factories or something that was more industry, now it's you're able to hold a camera in your hands basically, and it's like, wait, how do you explain some of the mishaps from that, or the cool things that happen that you're like, so it's the same thing of just like not having enough information and also being bemused kind of constantly by the
Yeah.
technology.
I mean, think about going from oil lamps to electric light, like how spiritually affecting that
Yeah.
technologic advancement is.
And it like, how electricity, it goes out and then comes back on, and you're like, wait, but that a candle, I had pretty much complete control over it, or it was the wind. But electricity, that's magic. It shouldn't just stop and then start again.
Yeah, and it was like, think about X-rays. Like, X-rays
Yeah.
were everywhere at this point because they didn't know how dangerous they were. So you would go to a shoe store and they would X-ray your foot in the shoe just for fun to show you how your shoe fit. Like these X-ray boxes, they were relatively cheap. I mean, during World War One, they put them all in vans and trucks and moved them around so that they could X-ray people in the field. But they were feeding people radium and stuff, so they didn't really know. Yeah, but this technology, I mean, it was everywhere and it was like magic at the time. Another one is that radio and radio waves had just sort of become this massive technology. And people like Thomas Edison and Marconi, they genuinely were working on technologies to communicate with spirits and the dead. Thomas Edison worked on a spirit phone. Technology and the supernatural were really sort of intermingled at the time.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's a great setting for something like this where the goal really, really, when you're playing this game, definitely fun, but then also, you know, number two is be scared.
Yeah,
And get freaked out. Get freaked out with your friends. Make your friends freak out. Everyone freak out all over the place.
I know. And well, that's the thing too. Like the mechanics of this are designed to make the role playing immersive in a way. Like those rules are meant to inspire your play at the table, and the goal is for the game master and the players all to collectively work together to really enhance that experience and the ambiance of what they're doing. Like I want people to play this by candlelight. I want people to really make their spaces conducive to the experience of this game, as if in the same way you would take out a Ouija board and have that spooky
Yeah.
experience. This game is meant to sort of be played at the table with that same spirit.
Yes, besides being scared and the terror gauge and the setting, it's also very important that characters die
Yeah.
and that the game doesn't end, and or their specific game does not end when they die.
Yeah.
So while you're puppet mastering your characters to be more afraid and to have all the effects, drain them while they're going insane and whatever, you also might be puppet mastering them towards death in a very real and intentional way
Yeah.
because
Because let's be honest, players hate when their characters die in every other game.
I wrote a whole song about it. It's called The Worst of the Terrible Things, and you list all the things that are bad in the world, and then the worst of the terrible things is having your character die. A little tongue in cheek there. There are worse things, but yeah, in the moment, oh my gosh, it's devastating.
Yeah, so, one of my goals, because in order to serve the genre and the spirit of the game, was to make character death, not player death, character death
Jesus. Well, when you
fun.
die in the game, you die in real life.
That's yeah, exactly. That's going to be a second edition. Um, no, so when a character dies, it's always devastating. And for us, a character dying is just the next stage of the
It's
adventure.
just a freaking ellipses, baby.
Hell yeah, we have afterlife play. In our game, you get to turn into a ghost or a revenant, as we call them in the game. Um, what it ultimately does is unlock an entirely new level of play for you. Your character lives. If they die, they then become a ghost. They get unique revenant powers and they get unfinished business. It can be either generated by a table or it can be generated by the scenario or the game master, but you get ultimately a mission that you need to complete as a ghost. And if you don't complete it in the scenario you're in that specific haunted house moment, you continue the game as a revenant, as a ghost character until you finish that thing. And then the best thing is you then get to sort of resurrect your character and come back. And this is our respec system, it's our multi-classing system, and it's called lineage. Basically, when you design your character, you shouldn't just be designing your character for your first person that you name. You should be designing their lineage. You should be thinking about if and when your character dies, when they finish their afterlife, who are they coming back as? Are they resurrecting as a sister, a brother? Are they coming back as some other connected character? And when they do come back, they do get to keep all of the benefits of their skill upgrades. We are using the skill upgrade system from BRP. We didn't mention this. Our system is based on the Chaosium basic role-playing engine, and we are using the Orc license. That basically allowed us to use the base stats, the roll under system, and some of the more fundamental elements of that game that people are familiar with to make it easier to jump into our game. Jumping back to lineage, instead of sort of leveling up your character or skilling up your character, when you get to come back as your next lineage evolution, you get to respec. You sort of get to keep your advantages. You have a few choices for moving stats around. You can pick a new class, and even if you pick a new class, you do get to keep a select number of powers from your previous class. This allows you to have sort of a dynamic way to do things. So you might be a combat based character, and the next time you come back, you might be a spiritual based character that is more of a support character, but you still might be more effective in combat than you would have been because you get to keep hold of those previous powers, abilities, and stats based off of the way our respec system works.
The spirits are helping you beyond the grave.
Yeah. And if you finish your unfinished business, you also get one of the revenant powers that you get to carry forward. So all of a sudden you have a deep connection to the aetheric world, to the supernatural world. And because of that, you are now empowered to use a skill that you didn't have before. So that's this
Unfinished
really.
business is just so cool. I mean, the whole lineage thing is so cool, but unfinished business is so iconic to, I think, what most people associate with like what's cool about ghosts and the why ghosts even exist. And so to have mechanics that reward that and I mean maybe even add consequences to if you
Yeah.
don't do it, then it's like it's just so cool. It's like directly funneling into expectations for a horror game, which is delightful.
The goal was how many opportunities can we take advantage of that come from horror genre storytelling that just don't exist in other games. And so that was one of the core ones that we were like, I was like, I want people to design their characters differently, and I want there to be a new style of creativity in that uh, task, because we all love character creation, and it is one of the most creative places for us to express ourselves at the table. And so,
It adds a bit of logic to leveling up. So, I'm thinking about D&D of like, oh, you just level up and then all of a sudden at times, you just get shit. Like you just can have new spells and new features and new traits and it's just kind of like blink of an eye that just does happen. And you can contextualize it. Oh, you stayed in, town for a few weeks and learned some stuff. Well, okay, sure. But this adds, it's like, yeah, there's magic in the world. When you die in our world, question mark, like that happens. But the logic of, oh, it's kind of, you're being helped along, and this creature, this being, the spirit, it's not yet resolved, so it's going to add some stuff to you, even if you don't have the same name and even if you aren't in the same corporeal body. This spiritual aspect of this is lingering near you, and therefore you have traits and skills and spells that you don't actually normally have. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it represents the character getting closer to the aetheric world, to the supernatural, and how that bond, evolves and develops who you are as a character.
It gives me ideas for role playing, just like, oh, okay, I am, because can you imagine, playing a character who had already had three of their previous people die? So like maybe now this is the great great granddaughter of, XYZ, and she's like kind of already like, just she's 13 and like tuned the fuck in,
Yeah. Right, exactly. Like this child was born and was hearing ghosts because they're
Yeah.
sort of
And
imbued by the power of ghosts, so they can become more sort of unhinged and more fun characters. Like, I just grew up and I see dead people. I mean, that's the
yeah,
sort of
exactly.
that character being
Exactly.
born because the previous characters in the lineage sort of set that character up to be that, you
Yeah, it
know?
gives you motivation for a longer campaign, because that, well, it gives me motivation for a longer campaign, because that's where you kind of want to get. And some people might be, what if there's a party where one person is still on their first character, they just never died, fine,
Right? Yeah.
but then you do have, yeah, the child in the party as well, and then you're getting kind of the betrayal on House on Haunted Hill, where you're like,
Vibe,
wait,
yeah.
what is this old preacher doing with this very intelligent 9-year-old? Yeah.
And the person who hasn't died, if they manage to pull that off, they've still they've still
Not when I DM, not when I DM.
exactly. They've still advanced, you know what I mean? So they're
Mm-hmm.
also like they're sort of like the elder in the party with like the most, even though they might not be their power organization is going to be different and it's
Yeah,
going to be more
yeah.
linear in their growth. Like, their also experience is more direct from a role playing standpoint. They've seen it all. They've been everywhere.
Heck
This
yeah.
this character is the character that's in the lineage. They're carrying forward um aspects of their previous characters, but they don't necessarily have the memories of those previous characters. And so you sort of get to play with all of that. Like, as you're imbued with that, you can decide for yourself like how much you get to carry forward. How did your previous character in the lineage sort of connect to this new character in the lineage, and
Yeah.
what information got passed through, and how, like, spiritually or supernaturally, like, how did they connect? And so that creativity is all yours as a player. It doesn't have to be rule functioned. It just, these are this is an example of how that creativity is really heightened in this specific sort of
Yeah.
system. So yeah, I'm really excited about that aspect.
And I know you've got some new rules that make the combat juicy. Do you want to run through just a couple of them?
Yeah, so my goal is to make combat seamless. We want to be in and out of combat without it bogging down, like stopping down, initiative rolls, all those things that sort of stop role playing when combat begins. I want this smooth transition in and out of combat. And so characters find their position in the combat order based off of where they exist on the Terror gauge. Once again, it comes back into play. The more scared you are, the sooner you get to act in a combat round. The more bold you are, the later you get to act. Everybody keeps a D100 in front of them so they can display their current position on the terror gauge, and everybody knows from round to round. But one of the most fun aspects of this, jump scares are built into combat. Jump scares are the ability for etheric enemies to move their position in combat. To all of a sudden, you'll be fighting, you'll be in the middle of the player's side of combat, and all of a sudden, you trigger a jump scare. How does that get triggered? Well, player characters can choose to delay their action. But if two characters in a row either delay their action or even forget that the previous person delayed their action and attempt to begin to delay their action, it triggers a jump scare. And the etheric enemy immediately gets a new turn and a new position in the combat order. And you just got to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that it's just it's stinker energy, but hey, guess ghosts have stinker energy.
It's exactly right. But there to this other side of that coin, every character gets 3 second wind points. And second wind points are basically your ability to add an additional combat action to the round. You start every day with 3 of these. And but what's more important than just being able to add that extra action to your combat is that you can actually use the special action that comes from second wind, which is to cover an enemy. So you can make this heroic out of turn dive to one of your friends to cover them and take damage for them in action. And that will also change your position in the combat order. So if you use that, but you haven't had your turn that round, you will immediately be able to use the rest of your combat actions and in that position. So you've gotten there, you've blocked and protected this person. If you survive, you get to use the rest of your action points for the round and take that position in the round for that time. So there are tactical elements of play. And with powers that can generate respite, you really do have a tactical way to move yourself around. The powers that people have can generate respite in combat. So you can move your character's combat orders around very tactically using those support powers. And it makes character classes, non-combat character classes, really powerful because they sort of become, they sort of become tactical wizards in that sense, that that
Oh.
the powers that they generate m- move around player position and move
Yeah.
around capabilities. And so knowing who those support characters are and the different powers that they have that can move you around the terror gauge will help you in tactically dealing with whatever enemies you come up against.
It's really cool because it mimics mundane people, normal people who are, are pretty much powerless against ghosts, don't know what's going on, but it mimics them having a fighting chance,
Yeah.
with the tactics and whatever, like you're able to determine things, and it's not they're not heroes like in D&D. They're normal people who are gathering information as they go and using that to serve them, and still coming out fair, like or at least potentially can come out unscathed.
Yeah, none of these people are superheroes. That's and or epic action heroes as they are in other stuff. They're normal people. They may have a connection to the spiritual world. They may have a connection to the etheric world, but those connections, at least at the beginning of the game, are very simple and very rudimentary, and they are squishy. We are
Yeah.
squishy, and that plays towards the what we were talking about earlier and the reason for having the 3-stage character cycle. So yeah, I think there's just so many opportunities to have a story at the table that doesn't sort of feel like the other games out there.
Yeah.
And that was my goal. How can we make something that is fun, fundamentally intuitive, simple, to get into. Like, I didn't want the mechanics to be overly complex.
No, it's a love letter to like how you want to play. It's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's what the mechanics are. A love letter to how you want to play.
Can we all scare ourselves at the table? You know what I mean? And make moments and make surprises happen. Like, the
Yeah.
best thing about role playing is the consequences of things not going right, and
Oh yeah.
generating surprises for yourselves. And so if we can do that and make that something that is inherent to the game, I think we'll have succeeded.
I agree.
All right, guys, I think that's all the time we have. Amy, you are amazing. Thank you for being a
You're
part of this.
amazing.
Everyone out there, if you've heard this and it sounds fun to you, please back us on Kickstarter. Head to the Kickstarter now, back the project, bring Blood and Ether, the supernatural horror role playing system, to the world of gamers. Help us do that. We love you guys out there. Thank you for watching.